Let's go over some of the economic arguments in the documentary. The one that seems to keep happening over and over again throughout the film is equating what is currently happening under state-controlled economies with what would happen in a free market economy.
The points made here regarding voluntarism and coercion, which are ancient staples of the monetary market system, or the so-called free market, is completely irrelevant to the arguments presented through Zeitgeist moving forward. Since the system is based the way it is, which many can argue one side or the other, frankly it doesn't really matter, it's still based on financial coercion. You must submit to the system in order to gain wealth and hence to gain the necessities of life. So the idea that there's any freedom in this system whatsoever at the fundamental dynamic level, which is purely socially Darwinistic, is complete nonsense.
And then it seems to conclude that state-controlled currency is not the problem, but rather money itself is the problem. This is incorrect.
I would be happy to see introduction of a monetary system that has one, no debt generation, and two, no interest. The only way you can do that is to not have it oriented with the market system. If you're going to distribute money as a bank and you have to make money, you have to charge interest on it. And boom, there's your intrinsic flaw.
In a free market, money is merely a representation of value in a market. It is not a Ponzi scheme to fraudulently amass property as state-controlled currency is.
He keeps going back to these irrelevant notions of fiat currency as though they have any relevance to anything. I'm not even talking about fiat currency at this point. Ludwig von Mises is in support of the market system, and that's what I address. Is the Chicago Austrian School and others that advocate this system that has no relevance to physical resources or anything else. That's the point being made. It has nothing to do with fiat currency.
Real money serves two extremely valuable functions in an economy. The first function is a medium of exchange.
And the entire strategy of a resource-based economy is to create an access abundance. There is no necessity for trade or barter or money in a system designed to strategically meet the needs of its population, whether it's a city system or the entire world.
Just like how liquid water facilitates the growth of biological life, money facilitates trade, and thus the growth of an economy.
Expansion is the greatest detriment to social survival, regardless of the context, whether it's human expansion, whether it's monetary expansion, whether it's job expansion, whether it's expansion of GDP. Expansion is the opposite of what we need throughout the entire economic system if it was to be real, which is a steady state economy. You don't want expansion. You want to find balance within the system so we can actually have respect for the environment that produces the resources.
The second function that money serves is calculation. Without money, you cannot calculate profit and loss. Without being able to calculate profit and loss, it becomes impossible to allocate resources in the most efficient way.
Efficiency is not economic. Efficiency is scientific. There is a percentage. There is an efficiency rating that you can calculate for pretty much anything. Thermodynamically, electrically, materialistically, depending upon like the material needs, the material quantifications, the tensile strength and things like that of a particular object. There is an efficiency number that can be assigned to those. It's taught to every engineer that comes to the basic curriculum. And so that's, considering the RBE is the scientific method for social concern, anything and everything that is created is made to the utmost efficiency of the knowledge of the time that product was created for the people. In other words, it's designed to last as long as possible, to help as many people as possible.
For example, let's say that a car costs 10 ounces of gold, and it would cost you 5 ounces to produce it. The fact that you'll make a 100% profit on your investment is the market's way of telling you that producing the car is the most efficient way to use those resources, as opposed to using those resources to make something else.
There seems to be a misunderstanding on the definition of the word efficient. The fact that you made a 100% financial profit due to what consumers are subjectively willing to pay has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not the resources were used efficiently with regard to planetary sustainability.
You're using the word efficiency in two different ways, at least to me. So the one is efficiency in terms of low energy consumption and well-lubricated parts, and it lasts a reasonable amount of time. And that is engineering efficiency. But then you're talking about meeting people's needs or preferences, which is more around economic efficiency. And the second one, to me, is not the same as the first, if that makes any sense.
No, it does not make sense, because your second definition of efficient, which is meeting people's needs or preferences, can be and should be the same as the first, which is most efficient and sustainable from an engineering standpoint. If people have a preference for things that do not meet the first definition of efficient, then we have a major problem. And that is why the resource-based economy and sustainability overall require that we adjust our value system accordingly.
The calculation problem is not how to create a car, it is whether you should use the scarce resources of steel, aluminum, carbon, rubber, plastic, and so on to make a car or to make something else, or whether you should use more scarce resources to make the car more efficient at the expense of making something else less efficient, or the opposite.
The idea that without prices you can't have efficient allocation is only true within the current market model. It has nothing to do with anything on a physical, tangible level. Once again, as they stated in the prior comment, this is a completely scientific evaluation. People getting together in business to decide allocation of resources is the most idiotic concept you could think of if they have no education on the state of affairs of that resource, on what that resource can be most efficiently applied to economically. When I say economically, I mean with a physical referent for the reduction of waste and maximum efficiency and sustainability. And the idea of polling, which is supposedly a mechanism of price efficiency or the use of prices, that could easily be done in a planned economy, if you will, by people simply describing what their necessities are and learning about what possibilities are, while also having a conscious understanding of the state of affairs and the finite planet and the necessity for preservation for their survival and the survival of the rest of the species.
Without being able to measure the wishes of consumers and the merit of entrepreneurial propositions against the limitless ways of allocating limited resources, which is what money does, then it becomes impossible to allocate those resources in the most efficient way.
Now, the second point of price efficiency, yes, this is true within the system, but again, it completely avoids the physical referent, which is taking science and applying it to the means of production in the most efficient way. A bunch of people trading for their own self-interest and buying because of their conditioning and materialism is reflective of absolutely nothing but the general zeitgeist of the culture, which makes these games seem like they're empirically relevant when they are not. The point here is that the market economy and its sense of efficiency assumes the public knows what the hell they're doing. And I'm sorry to say they don't, and they never have. And they never ever will until they're educated as such. So the only way you can be strategic, only way you can be sustainable, is to actually use a scientific referent for everything that you do.
The only response that I seem to get from this extremely crucial point is that people could give surveys as to how they want current resources to be allocated, and then finding some kind of average among the surveys.
There's a great deal of confusion here. That's really a cultural bias. The first point to make is that human needs must be met to create a decent individual, and those are empirical. And they can be studied and they can be quantified based on each individual's necessity, from calories to levels of nutrition to meeting certain deficiencies someone might have genetically, what have you. That should exist beyond the interest of the movement of money if we want to have a society that's actually based on people living in a high way, in a high degree. You have to make needs met, and that's empirical. On the other side, there are wants. Okay, what is a want? A want is something usually that's imposed. It's generated. It creates a false need. And this system intrinsically does that, as I've discussed at length.
This would be impractical, to the point of being impossible. And the variables of technology, preferences, and the Earth's resources change every single minute of every single hour of every single day. Who would want to spend every single minute of their lives continuously taking and retaking surveys?
This completely disregards the efficiency mechanisms denoted. A computer system can very, very easily, just like the inventory in a store, track what's there, what's moving, what isn't, and also orient new demand. It's extremely easy. People aren't even aware of what's actually possible. They're not aware that they can get goods that actually last. They're not aware of how they've been brainwashed by the culture and how that manifests these biased and socialite issues that seem like normality to us today. They're not aware of these things, so they orient their decisions based on false references, misunderstandings of what's actually possible, and of course what's empirically important. If you educate people to understand they live on a finite planet, to understand that preservation is key, to understand that we need to be very careful in how we allocate resources, then they will develop values that support that.
Another obvious problem problem that I see with that is that this process of taking surveys has no way of filtering out those who are not very good at guessing how to allocate resources and filtering in those who are good at guessing how to allocate resources. Instead, it just goes with the average of everyone's guesses.
This is a common assumption that there is somehow an opinion here about who gets what and how resources are allocated. Wrong. All decisions are arrived at. The very nature of science is to arrive at decisions. It's taking all available parameters, putting them together, and creating the most logical conclusion based on the amount of information at that time. Science can show us patterns of behavior that make it most strategic. Your opinion is bypassed. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what you think. It matters what's possible. And if your values do not align to what's possible, then there's a serious problem, and you have to change your values accordingly. It's that simple. People within the market system paradigm automatically assume that there's infinite choices and infinite methodologies. No, there's only one basic route if you want to survive, and that's incorporating scientific application to the efficiency and strategic allocation of resources, and recognizing what science tells us about what's positive and what's negative, recognizing dynamic equilibrium, reducing negative retroactions at every turn. This is the path of human survival. It's not subject to opinion. It doesn't matter what you or I think.
In a society with money, this problem is solved very easily. Scarce resources go through a bidding process. Each person makes a guess about which good fashioning that resource into will give them the most profit.
In a resource-based economy, if something goes scarce, the price doesn't rise. There is simply more strategy in where that resource is allocated. So if you're running out of copper, you don't say, oh, we got to increase the price of copper because we're going to go more scarce on it. Not only does that create an incentive for scarcity, which is a major driver today, the incentive of scarcity, it's a wanted attribute. You don't increase the price. You find a more strategic way to allocate it based on scientific methods. That's what a sane economy means. It means taking things that are problematic and strategizing holistically and totally about what is the best means to do this, not based on someone's opinion, but based on the current state of scientific knowledge and evaluation.
Another economic argument that the documentary makes is that the market is incentivized to intentionally make products that break down so that customers will continually repurchase the product from them. But it is wrong to think that this is what will happen in a free market.
The cost efficiency mechanism demands that profit is gained at all walks of production and distribution. In order to do so, you have to keep limiting your resources intrinsically to remain competitive in the market model. Therefore, regardless of your intent, regardless of anything, you can't produce the best. But if you want to make something that lasts, if you want to have preservation, you want to make a computer system that can be updated strategically, where you can exchange parts in a way that's easier than what you do today, where you don't throw out entire computer monitors because they're outdated, where there's a protocol of recycling, where there's an intrinsic environmental awareness to produce the most long-lasting, durable goods, when that is the interest, which is the majority of the time, then you cannot have a market system, period. There's no way in a system based on cost efficiency, you're ever going to have the best goods of anything. It is an intrinsically wasteful system.
Or I can lower my repeat business, but dramatically increase my sales and then just move on to another market sector once sales die down.
If Apple made an iPod that was dent-proof, waterproof, shock-resistant, which is technically possible, they would either be too expensive to make or too expensive for the customer to buy, though still easily possible to build. Without using inferior quality parts and designs that break down quickly, Apple wouldn't even be able to sell enough iPods to fund the research and development necessary to make iPods. When the ultimate goal is making money, the question for a company becomes not how can I make the best, longest lasting product, but how can I balance the quality of the product with the profit I will be making from it.
Let's say that I create the perfect book. Now, would the fact that no other book I write will ever be better than it mean that I am now incentivized to never market the book in the first place? Of course not.
This example is completely irrelevant in the context of planned obsolescence, specifically with regard to the efficiency of a product that serves a given function. Books provide various forms of entertainment or education, not just a static function, and therefore other books can obviously continue to be sold by the author regardless of the quality or longevity of the original.
I will say the planned obsolescence is very real. We don't make anything up to where the scientific advancement, the nature of scientific knowledge will allow us to be. If you can't see that, it blows my mind. Books is a ridiculous circumstantial example.